All right, hello everybody. Welcome to AP English Language. Today we're doing rhetorical analysis conclusions. And we'll be starting in the next 2 minutes or so at around 8:34 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just get some time to let people in. For now, just leave what state you're in the comments, please. I appreciate it a lot. Also, I've left a poll in the poll tab for y'all to check out. Just let me know how you feel about rhetorical analysis as an AP English language student. I'm so excited to get this show on the road. So I think first we'll talk about Fiveable social media real quick. So as you may or may not know, Fiveable has a Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. It is fantastic. They post really funny memes and they post stream reminders. So I would be sure to follow them on all of their social media just because it will definitely be helpful in the long run. Also, there are a lot of great streams that are coming up for the next week or so. So next Tuesday, or 1 week from today, Kevin Steinhauser, who is an actual AP reader who has read students and graded them for the AP exam, he will be doing live essay feedback on your rhetorical analysis essays. Next Saturday, Catherine Howard will be holding a rhetorical analysis Kahoot, just making sure that you know all the information. And finally, 2 Tuesdays from now, Stephanie Kirk will be holding a live review on rhetorical analysis modeling. It should be super exciting. There's also, I know for a fact, there's an essay, a model essay that's going to be done and a practice essay the week after. So I'm super excited to work with y'all in rhetorical analysis, which is why I encourage you to fill out that poll on the bottom there. I just want to know how y'all feel about rhetorical analysis, coming into the end of first semester and, moving into future units. So as you can see by the title, this is rhetorical analysis conclusions, and you might be wondering, oh, conclusions, they don't really matter that much. But in actuality, I think it does to some extent. So in today's stream, first we're going to start off with some rubric review, then we're going to move into a recap of the intro and body paragraphs. I'll be talking about how to write an effective conclusion, and then I'll give some examples of conclusions that are both mediocre and very good. So the reason as to why I'm actually covering the intro and body paragraph streams is that I know for a fact that some of y'all have not been able to attend Stephanie Kirk's streams within the last week or so. For instance, yesterday, she had a really fantastic body paragraph stream that I was there for. And basically, just to streamline the process of making sure that all of us streamers are kind of on the same page, I'll be including some information from some of her past slides. And honestly, I think as the conclusion stream, I think it's also important that I conclude the entire unit of rhetorical analysis in terms of teaching and having y'all learn from a lecture. Because in future streams, it's going to be a lot more interactive in terms of you're going to be submitting your rhetorical analysis paragraphs, we'll be reviewing them, or for instance, Stephanie Kirk will be modeling an exact way how she would be writing her own rhetorical analysis. So rather than me telling you how to write a conclusion, it's going to be more so you give an example or writing your own conclusion, I guess. All right, so we'll start off with some rubric review. As your AP English language teacher may or may not have been emphasizing in class, the new rhetorical analysis, synthesis, and argument essay rubrics are graded on 141, which means you can get a max of 6 points on all 3 of your essays each. The 141 basically means it's 1 thesis point, 4 evidence and commentary points, and 1 sophistication point. And I kind of structure it like 1 thesis point that is usually in the intro. The evidence and commentary points exist in your body paragraphs, and your sophistication point is in all 3. It just means that you really need to kind of weave in your sophistication throughout your essay rather than just stating it in like one sentence or one phrase, because College Board has said in their rubrics that they will not be giving the sophistication point if it's just a passage or a phrase. All right, so to recap the intro and body paragraph streams, when you are assigned a prompt for AP English Language, I really encourage you to bat the prompt. What that means is first, you annotate that background, you find what context you're given, what you already know, then you look into advice, which is like, they say, I would, things like that, and then the task, like what are you going to be doing? So in the case of rhetorical analysis, you're probably going to be finding the author's purpose, and also you're going to be analyzing how the rhetorical choices that the author made contributed to their purpose. So how the use of a simile, how the use of an anaphora builds the build the author's argument and makes their argument more convincing to their audience. In addition, there are two strategies that you can choose from. There's IDA or IDA, which I sort of invented, and TOBY, which Catherine emphasizes. I think those are two really excellent strategies that both work for AP English Language rhetorical analysis. And it's really up to you as to which one you use, or you can even use like a mix of both. So the IDA strategy is identify, decide, and analyze. So the first step is that you have to definitely make sure you annotate. So you need to annotate where there are rhetorical devices. You can use acronyms like DIDLS, which is diction, imagery, details, language, and syntax, basically just to like find whether there's like specific sentence structure or figurative language that stands out. It's like a rhetorical choice the author made. Then you have to decide whether or not it contributes to the author's message, the author's purpose, whether or not it can, like you basically have to make some decisions about whether or not that rhetorical device actually helps the author build their purpose. And then you have to analyze how it does that. So once you decide that you're going to include that device in your essay, you really need to make sure that you analyze how that rhetorical device contributes to the author's purpose. So I really think that like the biggest pitfall that almost like all AP Lang students fall into at some point in time is that they tend to summarize, and that like summary is death. You need to 100% make sure that you are never, ever, ever like talking about the passage and the main idea and the details. Rather, you need to be talking about the choices that the author made that kind of emphasizes and builds on their persuasion about their like end argument. There's also the TOBY plan. It stands for thesis, outline, and big idea. So first, you just write a defensible thesis that analyzes how the author's use of rhetorical choices contributes to their persuasion or makes their argument more persuasive. Then you outline, so you jot ideas down to plan. It's sort of similar to the identify stage of IDA. You basically just find where there are examples of rhetorical devices. You kind of like write out how you're going to analyze, and then the big idea, or the lasting message or impact that makes that article or that speech worth studying. And I think the big idea, like point of TOBY is really, really important for the conclusion of the rhetorical analysis, because you really need to be ending your essay with that like lasting impact that makes your like article worth studying. You're telling your AP reader, the reason as to why you should be reading through my analysis is because of this and this reason. So that's TOBY and that's IDA. If you have any questions, by the way, feel free to leave them in the Ask a Question tab, or just ask them in the chat and I will answer them like pretty much immediately after you ask them. And you can like ask me anytime about rhetorical analysis, AP English Language, or anything that's covered in the slides. I'd be happy to like go over something that I might have gone too fast in. All right, so to recap the intro paragraph specifically, I've slightly modified what you need in an intro. The first is the what. You need to make sure that you're talking, like that first sentence of your intro is, or the first part, excuse me, of your thesis or your intro is in his genre. So in his address title to, in like Kennedy's address in 2012, he says this and this. He uses rhetorical devices such as figurative language, which is number 2, uses devices like anaphora and simile to build his argument of X, Y, and Z. Then you state the author's purpose of the text, and you write to or for whom. So you basically describe that intended audience, the tone that the author uses, and that relationship to the audience. So all 4 of these, the what, how, why, and to or for whom, are really, really important in a rhetorical analysis introduction. And I'll tell you later how this what, how, why, and to or for whom is also really important in the conclusion. So it's very like fluid throughout the essay. What you do in the intro, you will end up doing at the end in the conclusion. So for the intro, I think it's really good to have an example in which I like demonstrate how like an intro is structured, because the 1, 2, 3, and 4, the what, how, why, to, and for whom, don't necessarily have to be in the same order. So here's an example of one of the intros I wrote last year. In fact, the intro that I wrote for the AP exam, because I happen to have this packet that I got from College Board of just all of the essays that I wrote last year. So Mohandas Gandhi, in his letter to Lord Irwin, uses a variety of rhetorical techniques such as effective diction and appeals to emotion to persuade his audience, Lord Irwin, that he should grant India its independence from Britain. Gandhi utilizes a passionate tone in order to demonstrate to British officials that his nonviolence movement is relentless and that his protests will be successful. So this is an example of an effective thesis, because what I do is I first talk about his genre, the what is he doing? Then I explain the how. So he uses those effective diction, he uses that appeal to emotion, and then I end with the in order to statement, which is the purpose. Why should we care, right? Why is Gandhi writing this letter? It's to demonstrate to British officials that his nonviolent movement is relentless. His protests will be successful. All right, so that's an example of a rhetorical analysis intro, just to cover I kind of just like tried to summarize what Stephanie covered in an hour. So if you have a Fiveable Plus membership, I would highly, highly, highly recommend you actually go and watch Stephanie Kirk's replay of rhetorical analysis introduction paragraphs that happened about 1 to 2 weeks ago. It was really in depth. It's very interactive, and I highly recommend if you struggle with writing that thesis. Remember, out of the 141 of AP English language of the rhetorical analysis rubric, that thesis point is really, really easy to get as long as you answer all 4 of those questions: what, how, why, and to or for whom. All right. If you have any questions, I've seen that some newer people have joined. Feel free to just leave a comment if you have any questions, or just ask a question in the Ask a Question tab. And we'll move on to body paragraphs. Cool. So in body paragraphs, it's a little bit different because instead of having like parts of a thesis, rather you're going to be structuring them in a sentence order. So the first sentence is always your topic sentence. The author's last name begins with this claim, and you usually include like a strategy. Okay, Stephen asks, would this example be the thesis alone, or is this just the introduction? If so, then what would the thesis be? So I think, like, my AP English language teacher always told me to just start off with a thesis, and I think different teachers have different recommendations because I know for a fact that some of the release samples that I read last year and some of the release samples right now have introductions that have like a sentence before of context, and then the next 2 to 3, like the next 2 sentences are like the thesis statement. So this example right here that's like highlighted in a lot of pretty colors, I would consider this the thesis, because what I'm doing is I'm talking about Gandhi's purpose. I'm talking about who his audience is, the like appeals he makes. So this like 2-sentence paragraph, although it looks like 3, is the thesis statement, which can be more than 1 sentence according to College Board. But I also think it's up to you whether or not you want to add a sentence before. And that's just like honestly your prerogative. Does that answer your question? If it doesn't, feel free to ask me another follow-up and I'd be happy to explain a little more. Cool. It's fine to add another sentence for context, so you can add like a sentence before, but I always recommend that the first paragraph of your rhetorical analysis, if you're going to add context, the last sentences, like the last sentence of your first paragraph should be the thesis. It just makes it easier to find, easier to identify, and you get that thesis point really quickly, I guess. So yeah, it's not required, but if you want to add it, that's up to you. Cool. We'll move into body paragraphs now. So The first sentence is the topic sentence. Then you move into a specific example. So in lines 3, or Gandhi begins his speech by talking about this and this, using this rhetorical device. So then you really need to make sure you're providing explicit text support that's woven into your commentary that supports your claim. Because if you don't cite evidence from your article, you're not doing what the task is, which is to take ideas and quotes from the rhetorical analysis and then use your own commentary to back it up. Because if you don't cite specific quotes or paraphrase what the author is using, you're not actually proving your point, I guess, because you're not quoting it. You're not providing that explicit text support. Remember, the bulk of your 6 points that you can earn from rhetorical analysis comes from that evidence and commentary. And I don't know if you noticed, there's a second part. It's evidence and commentary. If you only have evidence and you're just summarizing what the author is saying, like saying they use a simile and then saying a simile is an example of a comparison using like or as, that's not what you're doing in rhetorical analysis. You're not summarizing what a rhetorical device is, and you're not summarizing the points of the article. Rather, what you're doing is that you're taking that specific rhetorical device and explaining how the use of that device helps the author build their purpose. Also, make sure that you're discussing all those strategies that you mentioned in that first topic sentence with text support. Also, the last sentence is discussion of how example supports the idea. So what this means is that you basically connect that anaphora, the simile, whatever rhetorical device you found, back to your main claim, which includes the thesis, like why did the author write this article or give this speech, his audience, and the purpose, to convince the audience of this and this. Also, just to note, I know it says number 1, number 2, and number 3, but all this means is that you have to have all 3 elements in your body paragraphs. I would obviously suggest that your topic sentence comes first, but in terms of the examples and discussion, it really shouldn't be 1 sentence of evidence and 1 sentence of commentary. I wouldn't say that quantity is better than quality, but I'd say that you should, it should not be 2 sentences of text support and 1 sentence of commentary. Make sure that you're doing a lot of analysis. And so what I always did is I would first explain why the author used that rhetorical device, and second, explain how that rhetorical device helps contribute to the author's purpose. That automatically gives me 2 sentences of commentary that I can also add to more. All right. Angel asks, do you really need good vocabulary when doing commentary, or as long as you get your point across? That's a good question. Remember that on the College Board rubric, to get the full 4 points for evidence and commentary, that your commentary has to be consistent. If it's uneven, like you do some commentary on this device, but not as much commentary on another device, then you would get just 3 points or 2 points. So in this case, I would say having good vocabulary is a benefit, but as long as you have the commentary that very explicitly explains, first, why the author used that device, and second, how that device helps build their purpose, if you get both of those points across, then I think you're fine. But there is another caveat to that. It's that College Board actually writes in pretty small text that if you don't have effective grammar, so if the AP readers if it distracts from what you're trying to say, your vocabulary is awkward, or you say something that doesn't make sense, the maximum amount of points you can get is 3 points for evidence and commentary. So if your writing is getting if it's not scholarly writing, if it's not writing that they expect from an introductory college student, which is not extremely high level, if you're for instance, I don't even know an example, because honestly, I haven't really seen distracting grammar or vocabulary mistakes. I think you'll be okay in terms of I don't think your vocabulary would decide whether or not you have the commentary point. It's actually the content of the commentary sentences. They're not gonna having good vocabulary just benefits you with the sophistication point in terms of having really complex and really beautiful prose that makes the AP reader go wow. Also, I hope that answers your question. If you have any other follow-ups, just ask me another question. I'd be happy to answer. In terms of the other body paragraphs, what's a little bit different is that your topic sentence will have a transition. So the author next moves, or building off the strategy he used to begin in the first paragraph, et cetera, et cetera. You're basically wanting to make your essay flow a little bit better. So you want to connect an idea from that last sentence to the first sentence of this next paragraph, showing how those strategies build upon each other. I think it adds a structure. It makes your essay a little bit more fluid and connected rather than just you analyzing different devices and trying to connect them together. And I actually remember that yesterday, Stephanie actually talked about the importance of what's called a line of reasoning. And I really want to touch on that because I think it's a little bit different from the old rubric last year, the 9-point holistic rubric. Making sure that you have a line of reasoning is really important. And all the line of reasoning means is that you have this set of logic that kind of explains your argument. So you have your thesis, right, which says, the author uses rhetorical devices like figurative language, colorful imagery, and appeals to emotion to convince his audience to stand up for rights, right? So then your evidence will prove that your thesis is true, and then your commentary will just link back to the thesis and show how the use of those rhetorical devices helps build on that purpose. That's what a line of reasoning is, in my opinion. It's making sure that you have adequate evidence and commentary that proves that your point is true. And by connecting your ideas from your first point to your second point and your third point, etc., you can really make your essay seem a little bit more cohesive and written very smoothly, I guess, because choppy essays can be kind of difficult to read, and that line of reasoning sometimes gets lost in translation. I also wanted to make another note in terms of body paragraphs. I do not think that there is a set amount of body paragraphs you have. In fact, I last year had 2, or actually I had 3. But I had about 1 to 2 rhetorical devices per body paragraph, and I went in chronological order, depending on how your AP English language teacher wants you to analyze devices, whether it be categorizing by purpose or going in chronological order of the article. That just changes how many body paragraphs you have. Don't write a 5-paragraph traditional essay if you need to write more or need to write less. There should never be a limit or a minimum in terms of rhetorical analysis. I mean, there has to be at least 1 piece, 2 pieces of evidence minimum, according to the rubric. That's really the only, otherwise the sky's the limit. All right. If you have any other questions about evidence and commentary and rhetorical analysis, about the thesis point, about sophistication, or anything I've covered so far about the intro and body paragraphs, please let me know. And if not, I'll move into an example body paragraph. So this also comes from my Gandhi essay that I wrote last year. Gandhi starts his letter by using an anaphora in lines 6 and 7, asserting that conversation of a nation has, quote, preyed upon another far more numerous, far more ancient, quote, end quote, is worth any risk. So as you can see, I did something called embedding a quote, which is inserting my words with Gandhi's text, and that's really, really effective. I think we might be having an embedding quote stream at the end of November, and I highly, highly encourage you to attend it. I think it's November 20th or so. But if you notice, that bold is my topic sentence, that the author makes some claim using some rhetorical device. Then I cite the example. I kind of combined number 1 and 2. What I did was I wove that comment and the text support in my claim, in my topic sentence. And then as you can see, I have 2 sentences of analysis. Gandhi uses an anaphora because it summarizes the Indian people as being able to unify under the cause of independence despite the risk. In fact, Gandhi's repetition of far more helps achieve his purpose, as Lord Irwin is more likely to grant independence given that far more numerous people would convert to Gandhi's nonviolence movement. Reading back this body paragraph, I see that, as you can see, Angel, my vocabulary, not the best. Far more numerous is very, very repetitive. But it still goes to show, I still get the point across. I'm connecting back to my initial thesis about how it basically links to the author's purpose. And I'm talking about why they would use that device. Why did they make that decision to use it? And how does it build upon their evidence? How does it, build on the author's argument in terms of what they're trying to get at and what they're trying to communicate to Lord Irwin in this case. All right. So we're going to jump quickly back to rubrics. We're actually going to cover sophistication in this stream. And I believe Kevin Steinhauser had a stream just about 3 weeks ago about what sophistication was. So I guess this is a recap of that stream too. But I just wanted you to look at the decision rules and scoring notes here. This part right here is really, really important in terms of AP English language, because as you can see here, there are a lot of attempts that you can make that would not earn the the sophistication point. For instance, like an attempt to contextualize the text, but it's just like sweeping generalizations that would not earn you the sophistication point. Hinting at other arguments, examining individual choices, but not looking at the relationship between choices. If you saw earlier about the transition between the first body paragraph to the second body paragraph, examining that relationship between the choices is an example of how you could potentially score that sophistication point. Also, you don't want to oversimplify any complexities. So what you could potentially do is you could do one of these three things here on the right, where you're examining significance, purpose, or function of like complexities. But if you ever oversimplify anything from the passage and the AP readers notice it, then you automatically get that 0 for sophistication. Also, you want to be aware of, like, you don't want to use like complex, you don't want to sound smart but not actually say anything. That happens a lot. You don't want to fluff up your AP Lang rhetorical analysis essays, because if they don't show how the author builds their purpose, then it's irrelevant and the AP reader is just going to ignore it and not give you the sophistication point. There are a few ways that you can, however, score sophistication. The first is explaining the significance or relevance of the writer's rhetorical choices. I think you can do this throughout the essay. I think my commentary is almost like it's like a step towards that, where, because like in the past we didn't have this concept of sophistication in AP English language, so like this new rubric is new for all of us. But like explaining significance just means why was the author's decision to use that pathos, to use an anaphora or a simile, why is that important, or how is it relevant, right? Given the rhetorical situation. Also, you could explain a function or purpose of the passage's complexities or tensions. I think someone yesterday actually asked Stephanie in her body paragraph stream, hey, can we include like a counterclaim paragraph? I think that's a great idea in terms of looking at tensions, right? Looking at complexities within the text. So saying something like, although the author did an excellent job in analyzing this and this and this, there could be improvements in this. And then like explaining in a paragraph how they lacked certain, like this device didn't really seemed to distract from the point, right? That's an example of a tension or a complexity that you could really address. And the final way is employing a style that is consistently vivid and persuasive. So Angel, when you ask about good vocabulary, that's where it could come in play in terms of having that consistent, vivid style that is present throughout the text that the AP reader would notice. That could earn you sophistication. And as I said at the beginning of the stream, I think if you include that vivid text in the conclusion, I think that's an example of how you can show that consistency. Also, if you see that additional notes part, this is really, really important. It says that the sophistication point should only be awarded if that sophistication or complex understanding is part of the student's argument and not just a phrase or reference. So you can't just like say, there are some tensions in the essay. That will not get you the point. You have to incorporate it inside of your argument. And like, I know the word argument seems confusing because there's like a whole argument essay, Q3 of your free response questions, but all argument means is what you're trying to analyze and demonstrate to the AP reader. And in this case, you're demonstrating that you understand why, like you are analyzing why the author used rhetorical choices to help build their argument. So as long as you incorporate one of these three things in your rhetorical analysis consistently, you should be good. All right, that was a lot. So if you have any questions, let me know. Do we need to accomplish all 3 points in the right box and avoid all 5 points in the left box to earn sophistication? Great question. So as you can see here, all it says is that responses that earn this point may demonstrate sophistication of thought and or complex understanding by doing any of the following. So what that means is that you only have to do one of those three and not all three of them. So what that basically means is that you don't necessarily have to do all three of them. And also, I would say avoiding any of those 5 would be a good thing, but I don't think having like one would automatically like disqualify you from doing well, if that makes any sense. All right, does that answer your question? So doing one of those 3 in that like do box is all you need to score sophistication. I would say avoiding those 5 would be fine. Yeah. So you don't have to do all 8. Yeah, great. Thank you. Cool. So let's get into what you can and should do in a conclusion. So how I'm going to format my conclusion part of this stream is that basically I'm going to be talking about the do's and the don'ts of a conclusion paragraph. So there are a lot of do's that you can do. Your conclusion is really your opportunity and your chance to have the last word on the subject. It allows you to consider broader issues. You can make new connections, elaborate on significance, and really you want to make your readers feel happy that they read your paper. Like you don't want to end your paper on not sour, but you don't want to end your paper on a very boring summary, which is oftentimes like the majority of AP Lang students' conclusions. Your conclusion really gives your readers something to take away that helps them see things differently or appreciate your topic in like personal ways. And also it can like suggest broader implications that like really interest your reader and enrich their life. And I know that seems like crazy. Oh my goodness, like I'm like teaching a life lesson through rhetorical analysis. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it's an opportunity to like connect to a broader impact rather than just this one article during this one passage. Also, it gives you a chance to include some sophistication that you introduced in the intro and throughout the body paragraphs. So if you had that complexity of language in the intro and body paragraphs, mentioning it again or using it again, in the conclusion is a really good example of how you can maintain that consistency in your conclusion. Also, I do say at the bottom that you can include a brief summary of main points, but you don't want to be repeating things. You kind of want to synthesize them and show how they interact with each other and show like these supporting examples that you use to fit together. All right, so like I would say that doing like just one of these things, suggesting a broader implication, making a new connection, elaborating on significance, that would be fine enough in a conclusion. But there are a lot of don'ts, and these are all really things you should avoid. You shouldn't do any of these. I would never, ever, ever start a conclusion paragraph almost in any essay with in conclusion, in summary, or in closing. It just seems very repetitive, and like 40% of English students will start off their conclusion paragraph with one of those. So just ditch it, get straight to the point. You don't want to be introducing a new idea or topic, or evidence. Like you really shouldn't be including like quotes that should have been in the body paragraph. I would never recommend, I think you can, like it says for the thesis point that you can put your thesis anywhere, but I think if you put it in the intro, it makes it very impactful and it tells your reader what you're about to do and what your entire body paragraphs are about. So I wouldn't put the thesis in your conclusion. You can, but I think you can do much bigger things in the conclusion. Also, I would not end your essay with like a rephrased thesis statement. It just seems a little bit pointless. It seems like you're just not putting into any effort into the last thing that you're writing on that page. So yeah, and like you also don't want to make any new emotional appeals that are like out of character. And like speaking of like out of character, you don't want to be doing anything that you didn't like previously talk about. Like if your entire body paragraphs are focused on like an appeal to logos and ethos, credibility and using like logic and reasoning, like analogies, you don't want to suddenly bring up in your conclusion. The author also uses emotional appeals because like that's not something you talked about earlier. So yeah, those are some don'ts of a conclusion. All right, and then I'm actually going to show an example of a conclusion, 2 examples, and then we'll analyze them, and then we'll end with just a Q&A session of the few of y'all who have any questions for me. All right, so let's talk about some AP exam conclusions. So my conclusion were just my conclusions were always restatements or not really anything new. So like for instance, this one, overall, Gandhi's usage of rhetorical techniques such as a call to action, emotional appeal, and syntax directly helped Gandhi achieve his purpose of convincing Lord Irwin of recognizing independence. I don't think that this is a terrible conclusion. I think like 75% of students do this on AP Lang, but I truly think you can go like above and beyond. Like there is no conclusion point for AP Lang, if you noticed. And there's like a reason for that. Most students like sometimes even run out of time for rhetorical analysis and don't even write a conclusion. But I think the conclusion really gives you the opportunity to add something to what you said in your essay and really expand on what you started off with. So like I think this is a fine conclusion. It's really a restatement. I think I do bring up that call to action, which I didn't introduce in the thesis, but I talk about in the body paragraphs. I guess that's okay. But like that purpose the directly help Gandhi achieve his purpose of, that's like pretty much copied word for word from my thesis statement. And I think that's just really boring. And like what my AP Lang teacher used to always tell me is that you wanted to bring something new to the table with your conclusion. Leave your reader with some lasting impact. Like not with the, let me clarify, when I say like give them something to end with that wasn't like previously said in the essay, I'm not saying bring up a new like rhetorical technique. What I'm saying is kind of think big picture. Think something that's like every reader can connect to after reading this like essay. So if you read that like 3-sentence conclusion at the bottom, it's a much better example of a more effective conclusion. So throughout his letter to the British, Gandhi evokes a sense of imperative yet polite force, evokes a sense of guilt in the British, and clearly states his demands. First thing I notice is imperative yet polite. That is a demonstration of complexity. College Board defines complexity as like showing two opposing sides. So as you can see, this writer basically says that Gandhi evoked like two opposing sides of an imperative but a polite force. He is trying to ask the British to revise their SALT Act before he marches. So throughout his letter, he implores the British to consider his demands, yet still presents himself respectably and worthy of consideration. Another example of complexity. He's like imploring the British, he's like really asking them to consider his demands, but he's doing them in a respectful manner. It's like two sides of what Gandhi is saying. And once again, that just goes to show that this writer, although like the sophistication point didn't really exist back then, it didn't exist at all. This is a really good example of how your sophistication point can be really fluid throughout your essay, because in that conclusion paragraph, you can really hit hard on the complexities that you previously talked about in a new aspect. Although the letter did not work, that's attention. Retrospectively, this letter shows the fault of the British to not accept Gandhi and further Gandhi's legacy as the non-violent aggressor. This shows contextualization. It shows the significance and relevance of why the author like wrote this text, right? And that just goes to show that this writer did a really good job with their conclusion, because Stephen, when you asked, do you have to accomplish all 3 points in the right box? I think this conclusion paragraph accomplishes all 3 points. Not only does it address complexities, it talks about the significance or relevance of those rhetorical techniques and like the letter itself. And it also uses really, really pretty prose, like using words like implore, evoking a sense of guilt, retrospectively. Like these vocabulary terms really elevate your text and makes it seem like it's not just a high school junior writing this, but it's someone who's writing at an academic, like a higher academic level. And then I think the last 2 sentences are really important, which is why I bolded them. This causes the British to be more respectful of Gandhi, for respect will be met with respect. Gandhi is now in a position to gain the British's favor, and now they will be more likely to accept them. This is a little bit of like an afterthought. It's something that's not mentioned in the text explicitly, but it's a broader message that comes out of what the author, what the writer actually wrote in his rhetorical analysis, right? So I think this 1, 2, 3, 4, this 5-sentence conclusion paragraph does a really good job of answering a lot of the sophistication that can be present in a conclusion. But yet again, like remember, this is not expected of you. Like you're not supposed to write. Like it's not written in that like intro, in the prompt that you need to have a really, really in-depth conclusive paragraph that wraps up the essay. However, I think it's a really good way to show your sophistication and a really good way to show that you're an excellent writer that can go above and beyond. And so obviously I think this paragraph is really, really in depth, and I think it goes well with what a conclusion should be. So making sure that you're maybe addressing some complexities or tensions, like his imperative yet polite force, his like imploring of the British, but a presentation of like being respectful and worthy of consideration. That's complexities. Those tensions, like his letter not working, and what we're looking at retrospectively, and also analyzing the significance and relevance of those rhetorical choices, and analyzing like the significance and relevance of the text on a broader scale. Thinking big picture, like I would say asking yourself, so what, is a really, really good way of writing a conclusion. Why does anything you just wrote matter? Right? The way you answer that so what is in your conclusion. So I think in the last 3 sentences or so of that second example, that writer, that student did a very good job of answering so what. It shows that Gandhi has this legacy as a nonviolent aggressor. It shows how the British were at fault for not accepting Gandhi. It causes the British to be more respectful, et cetera, et cetera. That is the so what that you can take out of this passage and the rhetorical analysis from the student. So this is the last slide of our rhetorical analysis conclusion stream today. Sharply at 40 minutes. Coming soon, we're actually going to be having a live essay feedback with Kevin Steinhauser next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Then there's a Kahoot next Saturday that just covers a lot of aspects of rhetorical analysis. And then there is a model essay with Stephanie Kirk on the 19th, which is 2 Tuesdays from now. And I think there's a practice essay with me in a few weeks from now as well. So I am so excited to have a bunch of rhetorical analysis streams with y'all coming up. And I highly, highly encourage y'all to show up to some of these other streams. You get a bunch of different perspectives about rhetorical analysis. For instance, Kevin's is an AP reader. So you can really get like true feedback that you could also get like on the AP exam. Catherine is a really, really great writer. She's done an excellent job with like the way she structures her streams in terms of like introducing the idea of TOBY. And Stephanie Kirk does a really great job of like synthesizing all of the streamers together and bringing in contrasting ideas for students to use as different perspectives. So I highly, highly recommend that you attend all of these streams that are coming up. And for those of you who are just entering now, I'm so sorry. I don't know if you like came earlier, but you can watch the replay for this stream if you have Fiveable Plus. And just a note, I would not recommend that you buy an AP English language prep book. Like you don't need to buy Princeton Review Barron's like none of that is necessary because honestly, the best way to do really well and get that 5 on AP English is really making sure that you're constantly practicing how to write a good rhetorical analysis essay, argument, and synthesis, but also like practicing those multiple choice strategies that I'm sure you're doing in class that you can also do through Fiveable. And that's why if you really want to invest in something to get that 5 on AP English language and all of your different AP subjects, I really do recommend Fiveable Plus, because if you happen to miss one of these streams, you can go back and watch it, you can access resources from the stream, and it's really helpful in the long run. So I do have a last question or last slide for y'all. It's if you have any questions for me about AP English language, about rhetorical analysis, about Fiveable, the rubrics, anything at all, I would be happy to answer for the next 2 minutes or so, and then we'll end the stream there. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat box, and we'll just do like a mini impromptu Q&A. And that's how I usually like to end my streams anyways. So just hit me with any questions. Okay, how would you recommend improving comprehension skills when reading the prompts for any of the essays? I tend to read the passages, but don't know what I just read after I'm done. So I'm guessing this is like in terms of rhetorical analysis. That's a great question. So what we'll do is I will go and show you my thought process on a College Board rubric. So let me load up one of those and I'll tell you how I look at them, I guess. And I'll just pick a really old year because I don't know if you've like used, I don't know which prompts you've used, for instance. So we'll go with maybe like 2008 if that's available. Let me see. Will there be any live streams for the multiple choice questions? Yes, those are definitely planned and will continue throughout the school year. If you actually access the AP English language page on Fiveable, I can show you that too, actually. We'll go to that next. So let me change which page I'm streaming in a second. Hello. Okay. Nina, to answer your question, I'm going to go to, one second. So if you actually load up the AP, if you go to app.fiveable.me, or I'll just do this in command and improv, excuse me. Yeah, you'll see on the Fiveable page, like the generic Fiveable page, if you click AP English language, and I'll show you here just in a second, right here, or if you click AP Lang right here, you'll see on our subject page our upcoming streams. And you can also actually go down here and look at our curriculum and click multiple choice discussions, Nina, and you can see the multiple choice streams we've already had. You can watch those replays. And I know for a fact that there are more planned. And usually we have those written out. So like, for example, for rhetorical analysis, as you can see here, you can see that we have our practice essay scheduled on the 20th and embedding quotes on the 21st. So as we add more multiple choice streams, they will be right here on the app.fiveable.me page for AP English language. I hope that answers your question. That's just the way you'll find out when we have our multiple choice streams. All right. And now I'll go to answer your question, Stephen. Give me a second. Okay, so let's go with 2000. Actually, let's do the year that I was born, 2002. We'll do the rhetorical analysis from that time period. And although the rubric has changed, the concept of rhetorical analysis has pretty much stayed the same. So you can use like dozens of old prompts in terms of like AP Lang. All right. So let's go to the sample in 2002. Okay. Oh, that's an old College Board logo. All right, so, sorry, these are samples. I thought these were prompts. Give me a second. And if you have any other questions for me, y'all just leave them in the box, and I'd be happy to answer them. I'm just loading up some free responses right now, because oddly enough, it's not loading. Okay. Share screen. Okay, now this should work. Cool. So as you can see here, I think they actually flipped it back in 2002, but we'll use this. Yeah, we'll use this. Write an essay in which you analyze how Woolf uses language to convey the lasting significance of these moments from her past. So we can analyze this text. So the first thing you need to do is bat the prompt. And what batting the prompt just means is that you look at the background, you analyze what it's actually trying to say, and then you basically take some conclusion out of it. So batting the prompt just means, or sorry, the task. So first, you look at the context. So in this case, the context is Virginia Woolf, who's reflecting on her childhood summers. Then you want to look at the advice. What should you be doing? You need to analyze how Woolf uses language to convey the lasting significance. And then you need to figure out like exactly what you're going to be identifying. So here you'd be looking for language. So better than these walks, a treat announced perhaps once a fortnight was an afternoon sailing. So like, for instance, when I'm like skimming through this passage right now, I'll zoom in a little bit. I would notice that their use of language is pretty interesting. Like for instance, I see that there's a lot of semicolons, oddly enough, and that's an indication of like syntax and sentence structure. So maybe I would think, how does that use of syntax affect the lasting significance of these moments from her past, right? Or I would look at Gernard after Gernard, dab after dab. That's an example of parallel structure, right? So I'm doing what's called the IDA strategy, the identify, decide, and analyze. So when you ask how you can improve comprehension skills, what I would do is I would just be constantly annotating what the author is saying. So like, for instance here, better than these walks, a treat announced perhaps once a fortnight was an afternoon sailing. So I'd write right here, Virginia Woolf is going on an afternoon sail. She went with the fisherman, and TOBY, or I don't even know how to pronounce that, TOBY, steered us home, right? So then making notes to yourself and telling yourself what you read previously gives, like, you're basically writing your own like paraphrase summary of what you just read. But honestly, for rhetorical analysis, it's more important that you're annotating rhetorical devices. So as long as you underline the device, write like what device it is and why it's important, why the author used it, and how it helps them build their purpose. I think making those internal, like not internal, but making those annotations on that paper will help you in the long run in terms of comprehension. It means that you don't have to reread it like a third or fourth or fifth time. Does that make sense? And like this kind of stuff that I just did is kind of a sample of what you'll be doing in the future with Stephanie in terms of rhetorical analysis modeling, and with me for our rhetorical analysis practice essay. Nina also asks, do y'all do any midterm review streams, or in December or January? Do you just continue normally? That's a really good question. I know we don't have them planned now, but if you actually want to like suggest stream ideas, like feel free. What I'm gonna do tonight is I'm going to send out an email with like a Google form to fill out for feedback for all of y'all who attended the stream today. And you can definitely suggest ideas for midterm review, like what's on your midterm. We could definitely cover it in like a larger like semester review for AP Lang. Because I remember for my midterm, I had to write a rhetorical analysis essay and do like 40, 50 questions of like, what's it called? Multiple choice. Oh, Stephanie says we're doing LOC chapter 1 and 2 review in December. Yeah, we are. So that's cool. Then I think it will be, I think we'll definitely like shape our streams depending on what our student audience wants. So I'm super excited to like stream for the next, all the way until May. We have 2 streams planned per week almost for every week up until then. So it should be really, really exciting. I think I thought language and LOC was language and composition, but it was a brain fart for me. That's okay. I'm sure Stephanie will answer in just a second. But yeah, I'm looking so forward to working with y'all in terms of like new AP Lang streams. And if you have any questions or struggles or anything your teacher's been teaching that you kind of don't really understand, feel free to like let us know what you need help with, and we'd be happy to answer. Cool. All right, if there are no further questions, thank you so much for coming. Shout out to Stephanie, a fellow streamer, for being here. I really, really appreciate it. You know, fellow streamer support, it's great. But once again, you'll be getting that email tonight with upcoming streams, with some like slides information and like other info that's like really great for us, the AP Lang stream team, to use. Because as you may or may not have noticed, unlike APUSH and World History and Gov, we don't have like a set curriculum, but we are just like teaching, like we don't have like content to review, like the amendments or period 1, period 3. And Nina, you can tell everyone your needs, I'm guessing is what you're asking. How do we tell everyone our needs? Just like fill out the Google form that I'll be sending tonight through an email straight to your, like the email that's linked to your Crowdcast account. And then us AP Lang streamers will have more data to collect about what we can do in the future to help serve y'all, because that's the goal in terms of our streams, to be making them more individualized and make them a lot more fun. And I hope I'll also be asking like if this Q&A format was helpful for y'all. So that's all going to be included. All right. Thank y'all so much for coming. I also highly recommend that you tell all of your friends about Fiveable, especially friends in your AP English classes, because I think it's pretty helpful in terms of like practicing and having like a former AP Lang student or a current AP Lang teacher tell you some different strategies that you could use in terms of writing your essays. But other than that, thank y'all all so much for coming and sticking with me for 53 minutes and 30 seconds. It's been a pleasure talking to y'all about rhetorical analysis conclusions. I'm Brandon Wu, a former AP Lang student, and thanks for coming to the stream.